20,000. Am I one of the big boys now? Have I done it, mother? Now, realistically, it is going to take me a pretty long time to get significantly larger as a channel, so I wanted to make 20,000 a bit more special, which is why I decided to split the milestone video up into two parts. If you haven't seen part 1, it was a behind the scenes look at my animations. I'll link it in the top right. Well, without further ado, here we go. The 20,000 subscriber Q&A. Am I transgender? No, I am not, though since having a female channel mascot apparently means that there is a big possibility I might be, I've gotten used to people thinking that I am. Am I secretly evil? Setting my plans to usurp Jago Hazard aside, if I was evil, I wouldn't instantly tell everyone, but there would be signs. Do I think Thomas and Friends would be relevant to my channel once in a while? There are plenty of other YouTubers you can go to if you want to see Thomas content. I am a little in the dark as to why people assume Thomas has anything to offer that would in any way be compatible with my style of video. What's so funny to me is that I have made 2 videos about Thomas in recent times, one where I outright mock the structure of the stories, and one more serious one where I tell people to read the room. It doesn't always have to be about Thomas when the subject is trains. Yet people still think that, oh, maybe he will make a dedicated Thomas video if I ask nicely. It is the same as conflating Jurassic Park to paleontology. Don't conflate Jurassic Park to paleontology. I don't dislike Thomas. I dislike people who cannot read the room. Where do I see this channel going in the future, and is there any content I would like to branch out to? I think it would be realistic to say that in the long run I've hit my zenith. But in the event that people don't gradually lose interest in my content, I think steadily improving the things I'm doing is the way forward. Videos like those great locomotives need to be slightly reimagined, because recently I found out it makes for a far more engaging video if you tell a story of what happened to a certain class of locomotive at a time in history, rather than just throwing historical dates at you, the viewer. So those more story-timey videos are an evolution of TGL, but in doing so have carved their own niche, so now TGL needs to follow suit and improve. Another idea I wish to continue but needs reworking is another version of those model railway opinions I don't get style of videos. Specifically, I want to tone down the negativity. There's too much negativity going around in the model railway online space as it is, and I want to contribute as little to that as possible. Although Bachmann has made that a little difficult lately. In the end, I don't really have a great plan for this channel because, simply put, none of this is planned. I can only enjoy it while it lasts. Would I consider pursuing animation or art for a career? Simple answer, no. Longer answer, it's the same reason why I don't want to pursue YouTube as a career. I want this to remain fun, not work. Besides, the amount of bad things you hear about either of those industries does not bear thinking about. Do I think I could create my own SFM models if I wanted to? I don't really want to invest any more time to learn a program as daft as Blender. I spent half a year or so trying to make a few things before realizing I just really didn't enjoy what I was doing. Besides, you don't have to be able to do absolutely everything, you know. I would rather be better at creating videos than adding another skill I have to learn purely for the sake of those videos, which would take time away from those very same videos on top of that, if that makes any sense. Do I plan on doing something with the American or European mainland engines on the SFM workshop? Well, I have a counter question for that. How many of those models are actually usable for the purpose? On the European front, we have the A3, the J50, the C-Class, the Hall, the 1400, the 5700, the Sander 5, the K2, the N2, a Class 08 and 33, and finally Old 2747, modelled after the locomotive in Don Bluth's Anastasia. There's a few hyper-realistic locos available for download too, but those don't really mix with the rest of the Team Fortress 2 art style, so I've never used those. Equally, the Prussian G8 has no cab interior either. In the American corner we have an F-unit, a T1, a generic Camelback, a generic diesel shunter, what looks an SD40, and a Berkshire and Northern and Western Molly, and only those latter two have a cab interior. There's also this Hudson, but yeah, same story. So why don't I just stick to either European or American? Well, for variety reasons. I use the locos without a cab interior in the background, that way they don't really draw too much attention to themselves. They're simply more European rolling stock than American equivalents. Which rolls neatly into, what other locomotive would I like to see available for SFM? As we've just gone over, there's plenty a European locomotive for various jobs. There's the A3 for fast work, the standard 5-hole, and 2747 for general duties, you know. So, if people really want to see more American locomotives in my videos, well, maybe an American general purpose loco with a proper cab? Actually, no! Locking in my answer. A Pennsylvania K4. They were general purpose locos with a wide variety of looks as well, and having a K4 in RED or BLU livery would look great, as well as it meshing a lot better with the Tier 2 freight stock seen in the game. What is the best map to use to create railway yards? What I usually do is take an empty void and decorate it to resemble a yard only in as much as the camera has to see. Where possible, I use CP freight, but that's generally only for certain types of establishing shot. Are there any glitches I run into when making animations? There is actually, and I've showcased it at the end of Railroad Roundabout. Some models don't like it when the camera's field of view becomes too narrow, and as a consequence the model disappears when viewed from a certain angle. I most frequently run into this issue when I try to use the generic PRR coaches, which is why I either use the London Map Asset BR Mark 1s with the blinded windows or the to scale BR Mark 1s. What's my advice for new SFM users? There's two things I can tell you. One is general advice and the other is something I have learned through personal experience. In general, please take a look at your render settings. Now, getting your renders to be at 1080p might need some online searching, but a lot of new users who upload their footage leave these grainy shadows in the final render. To make these less pronounced, try fiddling with the shadow occlusion sliders on your camera, and more importantly, right-click on your viewport and specify your render settings. As for the personal advice, don't keep doing what works. Try something new every time, see if it works and if you just like doing it. But whatever you do, don't just find a thing that works and stick with it. It will bore you out of doing it before you know it. Is the number on the A3 in Thoroughbred a reference to anything? I'm glad you asked, because yes. 98122 is named Bet Darling, which in the Team Fortress story is the mother of the brothers who formed Red, Blue and Grey Gravel Co. And when were those brothers born? The 2nd of September, 1822. 9, 18 flipped, and 22 flipped. What's this? Oh, right. Manco assures that the 462 express locomotive seen most prevalently on their network is in fact classified as a Commonwealth class and bears only superficial resemblance to the LNER's A3. Any plans to make more animations about Kara? Maybe. Of all the locomotives in my collection, which one is the most in need of a retooling? As it happens, I don't actually own a lot of out-of-date models, perhaps the only contender for a model of such a description being the Railroad Patriot. But if I was to ask a manufacturer to perhaps take another look at one of their models, I would ask Hornby to take another look at their Thompson locos, with the exception of the Bay 1. Whenever I saw the other Thompson locos going second-hand, it would always be broken. In the case of the L1s, it would always have missing buffers, snapped pipework, and crooked electric headlights. Both variants of A2 seem very fragile from the running plate downwards, particularly with mangled valve gear, which also happened to one of my A2s. The running plate itself is also really flexible, so perhaps some higher quality plastic could solve that issue. Equally, the liveries of the A2s aren't right. The bronze green is too washed out and the apple green leads more towards Atlas Works green. So yes, if Hornby could take another look at their Thompson locos, that would greatly benefit them, I think. Where do I find my models? I used to frequent the Hattons website, which is also where I got my newest acquisition from. In the end, as long as it isn't from Amazon or eBay, I'm not too picky where I get my models from. As long as it's cheap. Will I do a full layout tour? This is a question I sometimes get, but really I've never considered it because, well, frankly, what you see is what you get. The buildings don't have interior detail, most of it is off-the-shelf stuff, there's no hidden section. So really you can see all the layout has to offer in just one look. Will there be less model reviews because of the rising price of models? Well, frankly, I won't be making as many reviews because I've basically exhausted my collection in terms of content. Really, the only locos I have not taken a look at are locos I don't really have many good things to say about. Or they're not DCC fitted, so I can't run them along the rest of my fleet, so I couldn't give a reliable account of the day-to-day running. But don't fret, I won't stop doing reviews of models. Just currently I have very little to talk about. Which are my favourite whistle and horn? For diesel and electric, I prefer two-tone horns over multi-tone, earth-shattering Leslie-esque horns. Not only can they still be loud enough to make me jump, the ability to toggle your tone makes it so you can have a pleasing fading out when your hand moves away from the toggle. For steam, there really is only one correct answer, and that is anything chime. I've never been too fond of bell whistles, especially not on large locomotives. A lumbering fire drake made of metal should not sound like Mickey Mouse when entering a station. What is my favourite American railroad? It's always the same debate, isn't it? The Pennsylvania's earth-moving network against the New York Central's indirect but level routes, not to mention the latter's subsidiaries. If we're going by what the railroad was and what it meant to the surrounding area and, more importantly, the people it served, I have to pick the Pennsylvania. It moved heaven and earth to create its routes, needing impressive if simultaneously over- and under-engineered locomotives to hold its trains. However, if I was to choose purely on aesthetic, neither the NYC or PRR would do it for me. I was instantly smitten by the elegance of the Baltimore and Ohio's locomotives, especially the Pacifics and Mountains. All their stock is just seemingly that much smaller than your average US railroad, and I like them all the more for it. What is my favourite Talachlin locomotive? In general, I prefer my small tank engines to have a discernible smoke box. Narrow gauge locomotives tend to have tall cabs and chimneys for their overall proportions anyway, and although a cabless loco looks very hardy, a cab 9 times out of 10 finishes the overall look. Numbers 1 and 3 are my favourite Talachlin locomotives for that very reason. A very front-heavy design with the smoke box with an actual saddle balanced out by their cabs, especially in the case of number 3. Bachmann's upcoming release of Talachlin number 1 has piqued my interest, however I have yet to make up my mind on Bachmann's recent authoritative stance on YouTube criticism. It is for this reason of a front-heavy tank engine with an actual smoke box that I have taken my first leap into painting my own models for a 009 micro layout. But that's a video for another time. And there you have it. Part 2 of the 20k special. There were a lot of duplicate questions, so if yours wasn't included, that might be why. I've said before, audience engagement isn't the reason I make videos, but it's a pretty good motivator, so I won't stop anytime soon. I feel, is the word privileged, that I can do things like this. Thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, as that means I don't have to just drop the ball roughly 1/3 into the video for people to still care. Well then, I hope to see you in the next video. Cheerio, folks.